Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Sitematch365, where it's an honour to be presenting our second session with the London Borough of Ealing. My name's Toby Fox, and I'm the Managing Director at 3Fox, the marketing agency for councils. Since lockdown began, we've been providing 2 digital channels to help keep our network of councils and developers and investors and their advisors connected. The first channel, the Voice of Authority, is back for an exciting week next week, responding to the government's planning white paper. On Tuesday at 8:30 a.m, we're thrilled about the Women in Planning takeover of the Voice of Authority, when an exciting panel of planners is going to be discussing how councils are responding to the proposals at a local level. And then on Thursday at 11 a.m, we've got a second panel led by the great Mike Kiley, chair of the Planning Officers Society, picking out the good and perhaps some less good nuggets from the white paper. Book yourselves onto those sessions now at thevoiceofauthority.co.uk. Our second channel is Sitematch365. Many of you will have attended Sitematch London in the past, an event taking place annually since 2012 and hosting around 50 public sector landowners each year. Each of those organisations spent the day hosting 15-minute meetings with developers and investors and influencers. And the event had some great outcomes in terms of relationships started and nurtured to the point of investment and delivery in dozens of boroughs, including Ealing's own Acton Town Hall scheme. The one overwhelming disadvantage of that model, though, is that if a council or a developer isn't available on that one day, they miss out. So while lockdown has meant we can't all be together in one room, it has provided an opportunity. And that's for councils to select a day that they're available and to provide a free-to-view briefing like the one we're going to see today on their opportunities and what developers can expect when doing business with them, and to host some 15-minute meetings, one-to-one, online. Any developers or investors who can't make these sessions can access a video of the briefing anytime at sitematch365.com and arrange a meeting during a second follow-up slot set by the council. So for Ealing, our first briefing was watched by 145 developers and investors, and a further 51 viewed it later on online. And we've arranged so far 16 one-to-one meetings with developers for the council. So our hope is that this new Sitematch365 platform is going to make it easier for the development community to play its part in getting the UK economy back on the road to recovery. And we look forward to working with you all with that aim. Today is slightly different. We're here to achieve 2 aims. We're going to start a conversation with Broadway Living, the council's development company, as it prepares to enter an exciting new phase. And we're inviting expressions of interest from you viewers in a dialogue with Broadway Living. Those conversations won't be taking place for a few months yet, but we're fortunate today to be getting an early insight into the company's plans from Broadway Living Managing Director, Philip Brown. We're also here to celebrate the launch of the most recent issue of Ealing in London magazine. A victim of COVID-19, the magazine was to be delivered into the hands of delegates at MIPIM in March, but of course that event was cancelled. So instead we're here on Planet Zoom to celebrate the magazine and its contributors and its supporters, and to update you on what's changed since the magazine went to press way back in February now. To provide those updates, we're very fortunate to be joined today by Councillor Peter Mason, the Council's Cabinet Member for Planning, Housing and Transformation. And we were going to be joined by Lucy Taylor, Director of Economic Growth and Sustainability, but unfortunately Lucy has domestic issues that mean that she can't attend today. But we have, fortunately, Matthew Taylor, who is no relation, but is Managing Director for London Developments at Vistry Partnerships, a private sector partner of Ealing. And Matthew's going to talk a little bit later about what it's like to do business with this team during these difficult times. But first, we're lucky enough to spend some time in the convivial company of Councillor Julian Bell, the leader of Ealing Council, who is so supportive of the borough's efforts to engage with the development community that he's joining us today from his holiday. So Julian, I read your magazine and I was fascinated to learn that Ealing is ranked as the #1 most eco-friendly borough in London, according to CBRE. That the borough is home to some of the UK's best-known brands, including Brompton Bikes and Ealing Studios and Ferrero and Bombay Halva. That Ealing businesses in total employ something like 176,000 people, adding 10.5 billion annually to the UK economy, and that 80% of Ealing residents are employed. and a high proportion of them are showing a sort of entrepreneurial bent, because 20% of them are self-employed. That 2,000 businesses at Park Royal produce a third of all the food consumed in London each day, and that 500 of those businesses are in Ealing, because the estate straddles several boroughs. And also, of course, that Ealing is about to become the best connected place in the universe. And then coronavirus happens. So Julian, how have Ealing's prospects changed since Ealing in London magazine was produced?
So obviously, morning Toby and morning everybody. Obviously, coronavirus has hit Ealing as it has everywhere, and it's a huge challenge for us all. You know, the biggest economic slump in downturn in 300 years, and so yeah, we're all in uncharted waters really. But I have to say that the kind of fundamentals that have made Ealing such a good place to invest and be part of are still there. They've not gone away. Yes, there's a delay to the delivery of Crossrails, our 5 Crossrail stations that we've got. We're not, at this point in time, able to say that it will be delivered in 2021 as previous, but it will come. It's still progressing. Equally, you know, I talk about Ealing being the best place, best connected place in the universe. I've been brushing up on the wonders of the universe by Professor Brian Cox as my summer reading, and I've read nothing to contradict my view that we are the best connected place in the universe. You know, it is fabulously connected, and even we haven't got the HS2, we haven't got Crossrail yet, but all those things are going to happen, and investments already happening based on those things that will shortly come to pass. Clearly, you know, there's a change in the way people are going to behave, and perhaps not go into their offices in central London in the way that they did prior to coronavirus lockdown. So that gives an opportunity for the suburbs like Ealing. You know, our town centres are ideally placed to benefit from that change, and people's view that they probably need to try to be more local. So yeah, we've been challenged. You talked about 80% of our workforce being employed. You know, we've been hit because we're to some degree an airport community. You know, a lot of our jobs revolve around Heathrow Airport and our proximity to Heathrow. We've got large numbers of people who are furloughed and now jobless, and so that's a huge challenge for us. But you know, we want to try to have a green recovery. We want to tap into the government's retrofitting program so that we can get our residents skilled up in those retrofitting green industries, and in that way not only create jobs but also do something for the environment. You mentioned that yeah, we're number one for the most environmental borough in London. That's something that I'm immensely proud of, and really why I fell in love with Ealing 30 odd years ago. You know, our parks and green spaces are the best, and you know, that's, I guess, newly appreciated and to some degree newly discovered as a result of coronavirus. So the value that we put on those green assets has increased. And so we need to look after them, and we need to make them accessible to everyone. And you know, we need to just enjoy them. And certainly, you know, our vision for Ealing is as a real quality of life place to live. And again, we'll probably talk about and you can see from my background that we are into sustainable travel. We're implementing low traffic neighbourhoods in order to increase cycling and walking, and we're doing various things in concert with TfL and the government to make this a green recovery from COVID. But I'll finish there. I'll probably say the one thing, Toby, that you if I don't get it in now, I might not get it in, and that is that our cinema is coming. Okay, I had a site visit a couple of weeks ago to see what progress had been made, and yes, we've had a delay because of COVID, but we're still kind of looking to complete the cinema by the autumn of 2021. So I was encouraged by that, and things are still moving forward positively.
Reasons to be optimistic, Julian. Thank you. You were talking about the sort of sustainable transport angle, and thanks very much for the background image that indicates very visibly what you're doing to promote that. But Brompton Bike Hire's Julian Scriven says in the magazine that he thinks Ealing can be a leader in sustainable transport, which is quite a bold claim, because every borough, to some extent, most boroughs certainly, are introducing some of these measures. You also say that North Acton will make the pedestrian and cyclist king. So can you tell us a little bit more about what you're doing there and across the borough to meet those objectives, and how perhaps the development community can play into to some of that work?
Yeah, so we put in a bid for Park Royal to have funding from TfL for a livable neighbourhood, which would allow us to bring to fruition those plans to make the pedestrian and the cyclist king in North Acton and in Park Royal. All of that's been put on hold because of COVID, but there is emergency funding, and we've got just over £1 million from a combination of TfL and the DFT in order to introduce a range of sustainable emergency sustainable travel options. We all know that the capacity on the tube is now severely reduced because of social distancing rules and people's wariness to go on public transport because of the virus. What we can't have is everybody jumping in their car who used to make their journeys on public transport. That will give us a second public health crisis to add to the coronavirus crisis. Prior to lockdown and COVID, nearly 9,500 people were dying prematurely due to poor air quality in the capital, and hundreds were dying in Ealing because of poor air quality, largely due to transport emissions, nitrogen dioxide emissions from cars and other vehicles. So we need to get people to shift to cycling and walking. So we're putting in temporary cycle lanes. We're introducing these low traffic neighbourhoods, which mean that we do block certain roads in order to stop cars rat running through residential areas, and we make it more conducive and safer for pedestrians and cyclists. We're doing what we call school streets, where we close off a school street at pick-up and drop-off times, and we work with the schools to do that in order to enhance the safety and air quality around the school, but also to help with social distancing given COVID. So something that we're really, really keen on. We've also been looking to put lots of new electric charge points in the borough, because we recognise that some people will still have to use cars, and we need to have EVs, electric vehicles, going forward into the future. So, Ealing will be the next kind of Copenhagen.
Bold claims. Now, there's usually a lot of resistance to those sorts of measures, especially from local businesses. There's always the sort of accusation or the concern that closing roads to traffic means less footfall, which means less business for shops and so on, and anything that that raises local resistance in that sort of way is a worry for a developer. So what evidence have you got for anyone who's building schemes, who wants to be car free or reduce traffic with their schemes, that won't just increase local opposition?
Yeah, and certainly, when you introduce these schemes, they are kind of Marmite. People either love them or they hate them, and those with a greater dependency on their car seem to hate them more than others. But if you just try to focus on the evidence, and you can look around the world, and it's been the case for decades now, actually, that this evidence is clear wherever you look in the world, that actually when you put these kind of schemes in and make the pedestrian and the cyclist king, it actually boosts takings for local businesses and shops and restaurants. It's positive. We can come closer to home and look at what's happened in Waltham Forest. They have what they call their Mini Holland scheme. There was quite fierce opposition amongst some local people, a lot of support as well in Waltham Forest. But actually, what happened was there was a 15% reduction in traffic, and overall, because traffic is not like water. You don't just push it somewhere else. It actually disappears, and people change the mode of travel and they change their routes. And also it boosted the businesses in Waltham Forest as well. So everybody actually is very happy and loves it in Waltham Forest now. So I'm hoping to come out the other side of this little maelstrom that we've got around low traffic neighbourhoods, and we'll get to that positive green place that we want to get to.
Fantastic, thanks, Julian. Now, normally what we were planning to do was to ask Lucy Taylor to give us some updates on some of the projects that are underway in Ealing, and whether or not they've been affected by the crisis. But Lucy's sadly unable to join us. I'm particularly sad about that because I've been working with Lucy for over 10 years now, and she's fantastic company. But also because none of us on this panel would accept a place on a panel that was all male. And unfortunately, because Lucy's not with us, we are an all-male panel. But viewers, please forgive us; it's not on purpose. Julian, would you be able to step up and give us a little update on a couple of the projects that Lucy was going to talk about? I'm thinking in particular of the Park Royal Opportunity Area, which is the UK's biggest regen project with 25,500 homes and 65,000 new jobs over 25 years, and whether things are still on track there. And perhaps you'd like to talk a little about Greystar's scheme in Greenford Quay, and the Quayside Quarter, Galliard's scheme in Greenford in Southall.
Yeah, thank you, Toby. So certainly Park Royal and the Old Oak Park Royal Development Corporation opportunity is still huge. HS2 is going ahead. It's moving forward to completion in 2028, and actually the focus of the Development Corporation, and I'm on the board, has moved to Ealing. It's moved west. We were looking initially around the land holdings that Car Giant have got, north of Old Oak and where the Crossrail HS2 interchange station would be. But that's not coming forward now. So we're actually focusing on Park Royal and the area around North Acton. So I think there are huge opportunities that will come forward, and to some extent this is a bit of a slow burn, but given that HS2 has now got the kind of green light and is going ahead, certainly there are huge opportunities, and you know, I will have to upgrade my most connected place in the universe description when that Old Oak interchange of HS2 and Crossrails station opens in 2028. In terms of Grey Star, Greenford Quays, you know, we've worked really hard with Grey Star, and residents have now moved into that development down by the canal. Yeah, fantastic place to live along the canal, and I have to say, Grey Star have been really positive in terms of their working with us to support different groups in the community around there, and it also, and I'm sure Philip will talk about this later, give us an opportunity to have some of our genuinely affordable homes through Broadway Living as well. So, you know, I guess the thing about Grey Star and Greenford Quays is to say that it's been done at incredible pace. You know, we got it through the planning system from beginning to end in pretty much about a year, almost unprecedented for that scale of development. And of course, because it's a rental, primarily a rental development, again, the incentive for the developer Grey Star is to get it built out, and so that's happening at pace. In terms of Galliard and the Southwall site, again, that's a key one for us. It's a real opportunity. I don't know if people have been and seen it. It's the old Honeymonster site, iconic Honeymonster. We all grew up on our sugar puffs. This is where they came from, and it was sited next to a spur from the canal, so that the various supplies and grains that were brought in were brought in by canal. But we're looking to open that up, so that's a beautiful public space next to the canal quayside there. And again, we're looking to see if we can make sure that we keep the option of a through road from Southall and Southall Station eastward through to Windmill Lane, and have a kind of relief through road that will connect Merrick Road and Windmill Road. So again, a very exciting opportunity and development, which is critical for us as a council. And we've really enjoyed working with Galliard. But that's just a couple of examples. I'm sure when we talk later about Vistry and Percival House, we'll talk about that as, again, another opportunity where we've worked very closely with Vistry to have a new fantastic council HQ, but also get some affordable units as well as other much needed homes.
Great stuff, Julian. Thank you very much indeed. And viewers, normally on Sitematch365 sessions, we leave these sessions and go into sort of one-to-one meetings with the council, but we're not doing that today because it's a slightly different setup, and that was the objective of the previous session. So that means we're free to deal with Q&As. So if you'd like to, there are some questions already coming through on the system. If you'd like to use the Q&A function on your screens to ask our panel questions and perhaps get an update on projects from Councillor Bell and Councillor Mason in particular, then feel free, and we'll put those questions to the panel towards the end of today's session. Julian, my memory of sugar puffs is that the content was mostly sugar, which is why I like them so much, and I imagine there was quite a lot of that being shipped by canal. But my favourite takeaway from your presentation there was that that Ealing is now the best connected place in the universe, according to Professor Brian Cox. I'm stretching it slightly, but why not?
Yeah, he's an authority.
He is indeed. Thank you.
He is
Thank you.
he is a voice of authority on
He is.
that particular
He
subject.
certainly is. On questions of universal connections. Councillor Mason, Peter, turning to you, we've heard a little bit about the projects underway in Ealing and how they're still progressing. You know, there is still work is ongoing, and there are the delays have been slight. But how's COVID-19 affected the delivery of housing in your area of specialism?
So let's take it from both of its channels. So we haven't seen a slowdown actually in terms of the number of applications coming forward through the development management process. I think people are still keen to come forward. You know, partly that's probably about development finance rather than delivery of housing units. But if we can get out of that a decent level of genuinely affordable homes, then you know, come forward with your sites, and we will, as Julian says, give you a planning process that works for us and for you. Unfortunately, that might not be the case going forward. If any of you have read the government's white paper, which I'm sure probably all of you have, some of you will be crying into your milk, some of you will be popping champagne. I'm not quite sure which version I am yet, but nevertheless, you know, we're going to need to make sure that in the COVID period, particularly as the sales market looks like it's going to do what it's doing, that we're doing as much as we can to get units delivered. And there are of course conversations that we can have about what format those units take. You know, already we've seen some people come forward and say that you might be having trouble with delivery. And if there are conversations that we can have about reprofiling what your types are, then that's something that we can certainly do. Obviously, we'd like to see more of those delivered as affordable, and if that works for you, then it works for us. The second part, of course, and I'm really glad that Philip's joined us from Broadway Living, which is really the council's municipal approach to house building, which is massively scaling up our own activity in the market to ensure that we're delivering on our pledge of 2,500 genuinely affordable homes by the end of 2022, using the money, the grant, the land, our own incredible expertise that we've got now in house. Thank you, Philip. To do that and to deliver that, and very much ensuring that we're delivering against the agenda of the administration when it's set out to both deliver genuinely affordable homes, make sure that people have got decent living incomes, and that people are living in healthy, sustainable, happy communities, and really addressing the fundamental challenge that I think, you know, coronavirus and the pandemic has highlighted, which is we live in a massive city with an overheated jobs market that pulls value into central locations, that we face a climate crisis, we face a crisis of growing inequality, and we're living longer and unfortunately unhealthier lives. So every aspect of government, including local government and house building and planning, are going to have to pivot to working on that challenge, and that's what we're highlighting in the magazine, but also talking about today.
What's the council doing to ensure that all that development in Ealing builds wealth for the local community, Peter?
So there are two things principally that are now kind of happening that we're working on, that we're going to really enhance that. Number one is the review of our local plan. We're carrying on. We're not going to let government get in the way of us having a coherent local plan. You know, we don't know when that white paper is going to turn into legislation. We don't know when it's going to get passed. So we're going to continue to do that. Actually, we've preempted to some extent some of the government's expectations on new local plan making. So it's going to be much more spatial. We're producing a series of design guides that have been underpinned by a major piece of characterization work that's recently been published. And in that, we talk very clearly about the nature in which we expect developers to come forward. We're not particularly interested in kind of one-hit wonders of tiny bits of land that get turned over to extract value. What we're interested in is proper conversations about placemaking. And when we have conversations about placemaking, we can then have conversations about health, about wealth building, about retaining value in Ealing, about local employment, about reinforcing our high streets, about scale, about massing. And when we can do that with good developers who are willing to get on board with that agenda, but also listen and talk to the communities that they serve and that they're making places for, we get better results. And that's part of the reason, actually, that people have a positive experience of dealing with Ealing, both in terms of our regeneration and our planning teams, because where there's a meeting of minds and there's a meeting of agenda, we can do that. And actually, Philip will, I'm sure, go on to talk about, we're going to be leading that. We're going to be leading the market, and very shortly we'll be producing a design guide that Broadway Living have put together, which picks up many of those themes that will serve as not just a design guide for the company itself in terms of the regeneration professionals that will be working to produce our affordable homes, but equally giving the market a clearer indication of what our expectations are as a municipality, and what we would like to see going forward.
And I guess they could be, yet another wave of sort of a change in the conditions that you're operating under as a result of COVID-19, in that if people are no longer, I read yesterday a prediction of office rents in the city and West End are likely to fall by up to 40% over the next 18 months. That's because people aren't going into work in central London. Perhaps they'll be living and working in Ealing. So that all of those sort of considerations to be taken into account as well.
It's a big challenge, not just for Ealing, but London as a whole. We have an economy that's predicated, and the government certainly seems to be ready to turbocharge the notion of an economy that's turbocharged by agglomeration, by the idea that you pull wealth into central locations and people commute to them, and you produce better value by, artists being next to economists and economists being next to, other interesting professionals, right? That's kind of broken as a model, certainly in the short term. In the long term, we may well see a return to it. And actually, in the long term, we might start becoming more resilient as countries in the face of pandemics, which, without wishing to, sound doom and gloomish, society has to adapt to new challenges. And we are a very, very populated world now. And pandemics and novel viruses are probably something that we need to be kind of in our minds as much as earthquakes and volcano eruptions might have been for the ancient Romans. So that model of centralisation of value is really challenged. So we're absolutely seeing a push back to the suburbs, just as we did kind of in the 60s and 70s, a kind of prioritisation of people's lives in terms of where they want to be, shopping on parades, accessing retail more so now online than ever before. Equally, office space. The Uxbridge Road corridor continues to have lots of interest, and we're still seeing some office developments that are coming forward. But equally, what does that do for the rest of the country? And what's Ealing's conversation and what's London's contribution to the levelling up agenda? Because we've got to make sure that we're not just reducing income and wealth inequalities in a place like Ealing, but actually we're using the value that we generate through the supply chain in construction and development to benefit the rest of the country too. And so that means, conversations about modular construction. Well, where are those modules coming from? Where are those materials coming from? What's our labour force doing? How can we make sure that we're building all of those things into the consideration of what we do in this borough?
Lots of challenges, and I hope we can shed some light on the challenge of the current white paper on planning next week. We've got two really exciting sessions on Tuesday and Thursday on that. So tune in, Peter, and perhaps
in the diary.
Persuade you to lean on one side of the fence or the other. But there's also, of course, a challenge elsewhere. There's a really interesting piece in the magazine on diversity in construction. And can you tell us what the council's doing to improve diversity at senior levels in the local authority?
Yeah, I mean, it's slightly ironic, isn't it? Here we are, 5 white men talking about diversity in the built environment. And as you say, I have pretty much a rule not to engage in manels, but here I am on one. Obviously, Lucy unfortunately can't be with us, and that's completely understandable. And strength to Lucy wherever she is. The issue of diversity is absolutely important. It's not just one that's come up as a consequence of Black Lives Matter, although clearly Black Lives Matter is absolutely the movement that's been driving this agenda, certainly in the interim. As a council, we've got to get much better. We're an incredibly diverse borough. Over 50% of the borough is from Black or minority ethnic communities. We have some incredibly strong parts of the borough which have taken on an incredibly positive character that really give such strength to our offer as a borough in terms of our 7 towns. That has to be mirrored both in terms of our employment practices, our recruitment practices, but also our training practices as well. And I think if we've seen anything over certainly the last week, is that access to higher and further education is a technical and a incredibly weighted and unfortunately, let me choose my words kindly, it's an incredibly unequal structure. And we've got to do as much as we can to address that. So as a council, we run programs for both graduates and for apprentices. You know, one of our key agendas is to ensure that we're increasing the overall number of apprentices in the borough. And that's not just like, you know, low skilled apprentices. This is high quality, high skilled professional apprenticeships into professional accredited bodies. And making sure that we've got diversity is an absolute key heart of that. We've still got lots more to do, but I think it's an agenda that needs to be shared by the built environment professional community. We've got to see more diverse faces in conversations like this. Likewise, we've got to see those diverse faces on executive boards and on boards of companies too. And once we do, I think we'll start to make better progress. But it's something that I think all of us have got to absolutely put quite high on the agenda of all the things that we need to face and challenge ourselves to contribute towards.
Yeah, and in our own small way, we've got Women in Planning are taking over the Voice of Authority next week, and there's lots more that we can do.
Good.
And we're challenging ourselves on that also. Thanks very much indeed, Peter. Philip, Managing Director of Broadway Living. This is another piece that sort of caught my eye in the magazine. How excited are you about the prospects for the company?
Well, I'm very excited. Obviously, it's a great opportunity we have here to build a sustainable program of high quality homes in Ealing. But first, I'd just like to explain just a bit about the background to Broadway Living and how we got to where we are. Ealing Council set up Broadway Living in 2014 to offer a more diverse housing offer, so particularly focusing on shared ownership and intermediate rent. And the first sales, and this is the image you're seeing now, were at Alton Court, where we had 31 homes for shared ownership. This is part of the Copley Close Estate Regeneration project. And this was very successful. More than 90% of these homes were sold off plan and all to local people. And it won the Evening Standard's First Time Buyer Award. This is the interior now. And also the What Home Starter Home Award. Should be another image coming up now. Eastcote Lane, another project which is early on in Broadway Living's history. This was built in late 2014, completed in late 2014, and had 43 homes, of which 10 were sold to Broadway Living. Incidentally, we're now bringing to market another 81 homes at Castle Bar, which is phase 6 of the Copley Close Regeneration. They will be launching later this year with, again, with the Broadway Living brand. But with the successful GLA bid, which secured just over 99 million of grant, Broadway Living is now transforming itself into becoming the council's delivery vehicle for affordable homes and the regeneration programme. And it will have access to council land and will be backed by council loans and GLA grants, so a lot of opportunity, but it's not constrained to only work on Ealing land, and we are actually exploring several market opportunities now. But the initial priority is still to support the council's commitment to building 2,500 genuinely affordable homes by March 2022. And I'll talk about that later on, just in terms of targets. And to do this, we'll make the best use of council's land and work with partners to maximise the number of rented homes. So we are scaling up, and we're transferring some staff from the housing team in Ealing, which I also lead at the moment, and along with external recruitment to form something like 35 posts in the new company. And we're finalising our business plans right now. So we'll have around 1,400 homes identified for starts up to 22, 23. And we plan to deliver an additional 400 to 500 starts a year from then. And we are also setting up a registered provider, which we have imaginatively called Broadway Living RP. And we expect registration in October this year. New homes will be transferred into BLRP with Broadway Living acting as the development agent. both for Broadway Living RP and for the council on schemes that will remain in the HRA. And I believe you've gone past the slide showing the design guide. There we go. We're also developing a design guide, as Peter has mentioned, and the design guide is there to support the development of very high quality, sustainable and healthy homes, and its key themes set out on this diagram. You can see the three circles are sustainability, healthy and affordable homes, and we now have a second draft of this, which we will start to use with feedback from projects then being used to update the design guide. And just a bit about the structure again. So we're looking at, in addition to having the housing association underneath Broadway Living head company, setting up a temporary accommodation provider. This is more medium term than immediate, and possibly also a market rate subsidiary. So that's just a bit about the background there. In terms of current programme and current projects, you can see a Norwood Road car park. This is in planning at the moment. We are launching a programme of new small sites, which will deliver around 140 homes across 6 sites. And this is on the back of Ealing's very successful previous small sites programme, which saw Hill Partnerships delivering around 300 homes on 19 sites. So as I said, this image is Norwood Road car park. But in addition to that, we are developing, well, this one is other end of the scale. This is a potential partnership with a housing association which has adjacent land, and this will deliver around 500 homes in Southall. This, of course, is pre-planning, so that could change. We're also developing new homes for older people as part of our affordable older home strategy. And we have a scheme in Acton which will deliver 138 homes, 100 of which are for rent and 38 for sale, again at pre-planning stage. And as I think we've already mentioned, there are some major capital projects coming forward in Ealing, such as Percival House. And it's intended that Broadway Living buys some of the homes at the Percival House development. And I believe Matthew Taylor is from Vistry speaking about this later. Percival House itself, which is Ealing's current HQ, is being delivered in partnership with Vistry, and Broadway Living will acquire a considerable number of the homes that will be built there. In addition, we're acquiring around 200 homes at the Gurnell Leisure Centre, which again is in planning, and that's being redeveloped in partnership with Eco World. And across the regeneration programme, Broadway Living is looking at buying around 250 homes across various estates, and we're exploring forward purchase of additional blocks on existing regeneration projects. Our involvement in these projects certainly helps the council with cash flow, and also helps de-risk regeneration projects where we have current market risk.
That's fantastic stuff. What an exciting programme, Philip. What's the timing of the sort of change to the nature of the business, in particular on the RP side? What can you say about that?
Well, the RP is being registered in October, and that's our latest understanding. And then we will approve our business plan in November, and we will launch the company formally in terms of staff transferring and it starting to develop in its own right early in the new year. All we need to achieve is investment partner status with the GLA so we can access grant directly. We are applying now, and we imagine that application should be complete very shortly after we've had registration from the regulator of social housing. So in terms of partnerships, and talking about the Southall scheme just now, which is the joint venture, we are a commercial company with a commercial mindset and would make an ideal partner, but we have obviously very good access to decision makers inside the council, and so can certainly offer something unique there that may be of interest. And we'd be very keen to explore opportunities where our involvement might start projects that are currently stalled.
Great stuff, Philip. Thanks very much. And what about, I mean, all of this is focused within Ealing, isn't it? But I know a lot of the industry at the moment is focused particularly on the sort of modular side of construction, looking at aggregating as much demand as possible in order to make modular a really cost-effective solution. Are you looking at working outside the borders of the borough?
Not immediately, no. But what I can say is that there are other local housing companies across London, not that many, and we have formed an informal group, which we're calling WOC, which is the Wholly Owned Companies Group. And so far we have Lewisham, Lambeth and Barking and Dagenham in that group, and we intend to approach one or two others, Waltham Forest in particular. Julia mentioned them earlier. And we don't compete directly, which is one of the features. We work very locally, but we work in the same environment, the same operating environment, and we have the same challenges and the same issues. And so it's very helpful that we meet regularly and discuss those issues. And as we don't compete directly, we can engage very actively on best practice, and we can cooperate in areas that could bring mutual benefit, and for instance, procurement. And another is potentially promoting modern methods. But you have mentioned this, and of course, going back to the design guide, we are aiming to deliver net zero carbon over a few years. The aspiration in the design guide is to get to that point. Well, we think we'll be looking at passive house initially, but of course we'll need to innovate to achieve these ambitious objectives in the design guides, and that will mean certainly looking more at how we can bring technology onto site to make those aspirations real.
Obviously, you know, it's an award-winning business, Broadway Living, and in the magazine, companies like Hill and Vistry are talking very highly of their sort of partnerships with you, and you don't want to fix what isn't broken. But when you're looking forward, your sort of 3-year plan or 5-year plan, what kind of scale could you see Broadway Living evolving to?
A very good question. So we have a current business plan in draft, which has 1,400 homes, which we will approve this year in November. But that's the initial, those are identified projects that can start on site by March 22. And that deadline was, of course, in line with the original GLA programme. And most of those projects take GLA grants. But we're looking actively to increase that number. So we've another 400 or 500 homes coming into a redrafted, a revamped business plan. So it will contain something like 1,900, which can start by March 23, which is the extra year from the GLA programme. And we aim to deliver 400 to 500 homes a year to start on site from then on. So we're looking at a sustained delivery of between 400 and 500 homes a year. But of course, there's a lot of opportunity. And so we've identified around 6,000 homes across the borough that we could deliver in the medium to longer term, either direct delivery or in partnership. And then there's the regeneration projects, which Broadway Living will manage as well. So we'll be the commercial partner for the council in delivering the regeneration projects that are being delivered with other partners. And so altogether, there is a large volume of work. And this goes back to the first question you asked about being excited. Yes, well, certainly I am, because it's a very, very exciting place to be, bringing this forward and helping deliver these very high quality, affordable homes across the borough.
You mentioned WOC, and in hearing that, being me, I felt a webinar coming on. But you're collaborating with other housing companies, other development companies. But you guys are pioneers. You were one of the first. And even though we might not hear about Broadway Living perhaps as much as it deserves, what lessons have you learned that other council development companies might find useful?
So, well, we are meeting regularly. We were one of the first, but the others that I've mentioned have also established their companies now and are beginning to develop. So we're all roughly in the same place. I think our program is the biggest of the ones I've mentioned, although others operate in slightly different ways. So we do have a lot of good practice we can share. One of the critical things is governance. We need to operate at speed and the governance needs to be right. So of course the governance inside Broadway Living needs to run parallel with the governance inside the council. And for us, which is different of course to the other wholly owned companies, we will have the council as landowner and as the shareholder of Broadway Living and also as the funder. So it has three separate roles. Plus it has a commissioning role. So the council will establish a housing commissioning role on formation of Broadway Living and myself moving across into the MD role. Then the council will be the housing commissioner. So that's unique to us. And the other wholly owned companies are slightly different and have slightly different setups. But Broadway Living has its own board and operates independently, and the housing association part of Broadway Living needs, of course, to conform to all of the regulations of the regulator of social housing. So it operates in a slightly different regulatory environment to normal council house building would. And that's, in fact, one of the benefits.
Yeah, okay. Well, viewers, if you want to engage in a dialogue with Broadway Living over the coming months, bearing in mind that that many of these changes are sort of down the road a bit, that we will be emailing all of you with an invitation to express your interest in doing so, as well as an invitation to receive a copy of the magazine or to read it online as you see fit. But now we're going to turn to Matthew Taylor, who is the winner of today's Most Patient Man award, Matthew, Managing Director of London Developments at Vistry Partnerships. And we've mentioned Vistry and your work in Ealing a couple of times through the session so far. But can you give us a sort of briefing, a little outline of the nature of your investment in Ealing? And as a developer, how would you characterise Ealing as a council to work with?
Just to start off, you've probably had a window into my home life, running behind with toddlers and children.
That's modern working life, isn't it?
Very much so, very much so. Trying to strike the balance between agile working and a return to the office is a challenge for all at the minute. I thought I'd kick off just quickly introducing Vistry as a development business, because the brand probably isn't too familiar with some of the audience. It's a recent brand that was formed following the merger of Bovis Homes, Linden Homes and Galliford Try Partnerships at the beginning of the year. We are effectively a top 5 national house builder, but slightly different from a lot of the other development businesses in that we are both a construction company and a house builder. We tend to work generally in partnership in London with the GLA, London boroughs and our framework RPs, and so look forward to working closely with Broadway Living. We typically try and use our construction expertise to manage risk, control cost on behalf of partners, but then we utilise the brand, the expertise of sister companies, Linden Homes, Bovis Homes, to maximise value. So we're a bit of a one-stop shop. We deliver mixed use, residential-led schemes, so we're not necessarily just about housing. And I think when you look at large-scale regeneration across London, it's often the other uses that really make the place. It's not just the housing, it's the amenities, it's the public realm, it's the offices, it's the food, beverage, and other uses. And we deliver all of those as a development company. We're also slightly different in that we're not solely margin driven as a delivery partner. So typically between 65 to 80% of the schemes that we deliver are forward funded, and we bring on partners like Broadway Living to deliver affordable housing that they forward fund. But equally, we also bring in build to rent operators, extra care, co-living, to mean that at day one of the project, we're fairly secure, comfortable that we can accelerate delivery, and we're hedged against any potential housing market cycle. We're not sitting there as a traditional house builder who will flex their delivery rate depending upon their sales rate. So we tend to deliver schemes far quicker than other typical house builders, which, working with London boroughs and the housing targets and the mayor's ambition for affordable housing in London, politically we're very aligned. And this is at a time when many house builders, some have run for the hills at the first sign of uncertainty. We've actually expanded our programme quite significantly over the last 3 or 4 years. We have moved in from Essex into East London, and different to other house builders, we're actually moving west at a time when others are looking east. Looking at Ealing in particular, a recent project we've just delivered, one of the first phases at Old Oak Common, at Old Oak in partnership with QPR and Notting Hill. That was a 605 unit scheme, 40% affordable housing, but the balance of all of the housing is build to rent to be owned by Notting Hill and QPR. But in terms of the current investment programme, Percival House, as Julian and Philip have previously mentioned, has been a long time coming. It's a scheme that we started looking at myself back in early 2017. But I'm pleased to say last week the planning application was finally submitted. And picking up on a couple of comments from Peter, it has been a very collaborative, well set out planning journey. There's been a significant amount of consultation with local stakeholders. It's been a very detailed pre-application process, and collectively we established a design review panel to really drive quality throughout all elements of the scheme. Very exciting project. We will be looking to commence early to mid part of next year.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. But that appetite that you've got for expansion and growth over the last three or 4 years, has that appetite been affected by COVID-19 at all?
I think our model, because we're a hybrid and we can hedge our position depending upon where we're at in any particular housing market cycle, means that we're just as bullish now as what we were 2 years ago, a year ago. It just means that when I look at the tenure, the mix of accommodation perhaps that we're delivering, in the current market with the uncertainty looming of a second wave or Brexit and impacts on the wider UK economy, we will increase the level of affordable housing that we'll be seeking to deliver. We'll bring on more partners to deliver other tenures, and we'll probably just leave ourselves with a smaller balance of private sale accommodation. Just means we're not exposed to movement in the market. And we can continue to accelerate delivery of the schemes that we bring forward.
Fantastic, Matthew. We've gone 4.5 webinars without mentioning Brexit, so that record is now broken. We've got some questions coming in from the viewers, and in particular, some just going back to some of the schemes that we were talking about earlier. Julian, Andrew Dakers is asking about the importance of creative industries to Ealing, particularly the TV and film sector. What can you say about that as a driver for growth in the borough?
Yeah, clearly, when people say, where are you from? And you say Ealing, they always talk about Ealing Film Studios, Ealing Comedies. That's what people know Ealing for. That's why I'm so passionate about getting our cinema back. And clearly, the work that Ealing Film Studios do and all of the businesses that operate around that is critical to the local economy. We have that skill set and that place in the market to continue to expand. Actually, there's demand for film studios, so that's part of the offer at Galliard's Quayside Quarter in Southall. So we want to have this as a key kind of component of our local economy and build on that incredible heritage of film and media that we have.
Thanks, Julian. Another question that's come in from Danny Kay for you, Philip. Will the RP be a subsidiary of Broadway Living, or is it going to sit alongside?
Yes, it will be a subsidiary. Broadway Living itself is a company limited by shares, and the council is the only shareholder. And Broadway Living RP is a company limited by guarantee and is owned by Broadway Living. So we have a group structure. And the benefit of that is that we can add to the group, and we plan, as I said, maybe to add a temporary accommodation provider medium term, and also possibly a market rent provider medium term. So we can add companies into that structure as we see fit.
Great stuff. Thanks very much. And time for one more, I think, from Ingrid Reynolds for Councillor Mason. Peter, applications for tall buildings, always controversial. Has COVID-19 changed the council's view on densification at all?
So the issue of densification versus tall buildings is slightly separate. So you can deliver density in a place like London. In fact, it's pretty much the only opportunity that you've got left to do if we're kind of completely unwilling to have conversations about toilet blocks and car parks on bits of scrappy green belt that nobody can get access to and just are completely underused and unloved. If we can't have a conversation about going out, then we have to have a conversation about density and to some extent height. We've done that at North Acton. OPDC have done that in the context of Old Oak and Park Royal. And we've had that conversation as part of Southall before my time with the area opportunity framework. That there is a place for tall buildings, but they have to be exceptional and they've got to be high quality, they've got to be well planned, they've got to be integrated into local communities, and they've got to be part of a place. Where tall buildings come forward in the middle of nowhere, then quite frankly, don't expect to have positive conversations with us. We're not in for speculative wealth accumulation by just sticking a tall building in the middle of nowhere. But have a proper conversation with us, make it part of a plan where we want it to go, and have that conversation with us when we go through the local plan as well in terms of character. And there are possibilities, but we're not we're not Manhattan, and we won't be in the future.
There you go, viewers. Have a conversation with Ealing. We'll give you that opportunity if you need it by email following this session. And if what you've heard today doesn't encourage you to immediately email all your investors and demand new funds to pile into Ealing, I don't know what will. But seriously, it's been a very helpful opportunity to update the material produced for Ealing in London magazine. And our thanks go out to everyone who supported production of that magazine. And thanks also to our panel for making the time to engage with us and with our network across the development community today, especially to those of you who are on holiday. Thank you so much to Councillor Julian Bell, Councillor Peter Mason, Philip Brown. Apologies for Lucy Taylor's absence and best wishes to her. And thanks to Matthew Taylor. Most of all, thanks to you, viewers, for taking the time to find out about development opportunities in Ealing. We hope we've whetted your appetite. We'll be contacting you shortly to see if you're interested in taking up this opportunity to have a conversation with Broadway Living or Ealing Council in general. Don't forget to tune in next week on Tuesday when Women in Planning take over TVOA and on Thursday for our second session on the planning white paper. So visit voiceofauthority.co.uk to register for those. If you need to watch this a video of this session again, it'll be available on Sitematch365.com shortly. So from me and from everyone at 3 Fox and from our panel, thank you very much indeed for joining us today. I look forward to doing business with you in Ealing in the future. And until then, good morning.